Welcome to the first episode ever of this podcast to ever exist. My name is Drishti, if you don't know already, and you're probably like, who is this girl? Who is this person who just decided to plonk on your YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're listening to this and start a podcast? Well, I read somewhere actually an exercise that if you had to introduce yourself without leading with your profession, how would you do it? Without leading with your nationality, with your age, without your profession, how would you do it? So I'm going to attempt doing that right now and introduce myself with no frills and really who I am. So I'm that friend that never wants to hang out to end. Like, I'm that person that just wants to be around my friends 24/7, have us hang out, have us chill, sit on a couch, do nothing, literally not even talk to each other, but just be in their presence. That's me. I'm that friend. I thrive off of human connection. I thrive off of meeting people, talking to people, talking in general, hence you watching this, me talking again. I love looking good and feeling good, and I try to do things that support and facilitate that, whether that is just getting ready to look good for myself or surrounding myself with people that make me feel good and people that make me laugh. I love listening to people as much as I love talking my shit. I love listening to people's shit too, and I can do that for hours. I grew up an only child and very much a third culture kid. So if any of this resonates with you, then this can be your little home, our little home for all things relatable. I am what they call a multi-passionate. I recently had a huge epiphany, and I had to put a finger down moment where I was like, put a finger down if you were raised as an only child all alone and really was longing for siblings, really wanted siblings, and so your parents overcompensated by putting you in a bunch of extracurricular activities, sports, hobbies, etc. So growing up, you were always doing so many different things that now as an adult, you feel like a jack of all trades. I wouldn't really say it's a bad thing, but I would say that it's a very confusing thing, because now here I am as a grown-ass 25-year-old adult, and I find myself loving to do everything until it gets boring. So if that resonates with you, this is the spot. I have my trusty iPad here because I woke up 2 hours before this. Let's be real. I literally decided to, like most things in my life, impulsively sit here and just talk my talk. Actually, you might be wondering, okay, why a podcast of all things? Also, if you've known me my whole life, then you know that the amount of times I just go on and on about starting a YouTube channel or, just talking and just being myself on camera and so on. And you're probably like, okay, a podcast of all things. And I actually had this epiphany in university, I think first year or second year. And I had to do a podcast for an assignment. At the time, it seemed incredibly, nerve-wracking in a way. And I wrote down a script, I remember, and we had to upload it on SoundCloud. And it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. And it was graded. And turns out mine was really good. And I was like, okay. Of course, me thriving off of academic validation, obviously. Not like anyone else could tell me it was good. But when my grade was good, I was like, yes, it's actually good. So I got a really good grade on that. And it was probably half the recording time of this, where it was a 2 to 3 minute podcast, but a podcast nonetheless. And I was it was kind of like a speech essay. And in that moment, I realized I was probably about 18, 19 at the time. And I realized I was like, you know what? This is just going to happen at some point. My friend and I actually started a radio show in the 6th grade. I remember this so clearly. My initials are DJ and her name starts with a J. So we made it the DJ radio show. Here we are. Well, here I am. Fast forward years later, starting a podcast. I would always sort of have not a running joke, but a running disclaimer with all of my girls all the time. I am that person that sends you a 5-minute voice note. I'm sorry, guys. If you get anything from me, it is definitely, I love picking up the phone and talking. Who likes texting? It's I'm so lazy. Anytime I have to hit anyone up, it's going to be a call or it's going to be a voice note. And every time I have some tea to spill or I have some shit to say, I am always sending my girls a voice note with the disclaimer, I'm so sorry for the podcast, but just power through. Listen on times 2 and get through it. Anyways, so I was like, this is a sign. I should just, get this going. So I really want this to be a time in your day where you feel like you're just on FaceTime with your best friend. Like, I will be that background noise, just talking my shit in the background for when you need that little company or just some mental stimulation. And I just want this to be a space where no one feels like they're going through this so-called thing that we call life alone. I know it can be incredibly overwhelming. This is probably me having like a quarter life crisis. Watch this be like the only episode that ever comes out. And then like 2 weeks later, I realize I'm like, this was the worst thing I've ever done. And I was in the middle of a really bad quarter life crisis, decided to make this podcast and never made another one again. Wouldn't be surprised if that happened, to be honest. Would not be surprised if that happened. Anyways, I want this to be a space for third culture kids like myself. I feel like a lot of people are so quick to like catch on to talking about really profound topics, and like, I don't know, like there's always like a specific niche, but I just don't want there to be. And I feel like I don't like boxing myself in life ever in my sense of fashion or in my style and in my hobbies or in anything really. Like, I hate boxing myself, which is what a niche is. And that's why for this sort of podcast as well, like I just don't want that. And I want this to be a space where whoever relates, whatever resonates with you does. And, like we're just all here, basically. No one really talks about the struggle of like being an Indian girl or guy, growing up in Dubai, having Indian parents who raise you culturally Indian, and then you grow up here, you were born and raised here, and you go to an international school exposed to every culture around the world in this city. And then in my case, you move to Canada and you live most of your like formative primary years over there, and then you come back here and you're just sort of navigating through not really knowing where home is. I personally don't feel like India's home. I've never lived there. I lived there for 2 years for boarding school. But again, that was a bubble. It did not feel like I was actually living there. And then I come here and I'm like, is this really home? I don't really know. And then I go back to Toronto and I'm like, this is not home either. Like, where do I exist? Like, where is home? So, I mean, more on this later. So I guess for this episode, what I really want to talk about, what I want to lead with is taking up space, right? I guess this is my way of taking up space. I actually wanted to do this as I was thinking about this for a long time, and I wanted to take this as a little challenge for myself as a format and way of taking up space. I feel like oftentimes this can be seen as sort of narcissistic, and I'm only saying this because it is really only those people that take up space loudly with their chest, and you really have to have a certain level of like sort of blocking out the haters sort of vibe of, in order to be able to be like, yes, this is my work, this is what I do, this is who I am, and so on. And by the way, when I'm talking about taking up space, I'm talking about it in every way possible, in the workplace, personally, in relationships, in your family, as an individual, mentally, all of it, physically, everything, taking up space. I feel like it is so important. It's something that I have been pondering about for a really long time. I feel like I really didn't allow myself to take up this set space. And that's mostly because as someone who puts other people before herself, you become super hyper vigilant and super almost sensitive to like the things that people say, to the point where like sometimes when people are talking to me, I'm just like, how are you real? Like, you're literally a hologram. Like, how are you saying this out loud right now? Like, do you hear yourself? That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something I never could see myself doing, as someone who just wants everyone else to have their moment, and is so afraid of having her own. It's very easy to write off taking up space just because you just don't want to be seen as a narcissist, honestly, and be perceived as one. But I also think that it has a lot to do with imposter syndrome. And that's another point that I wanted to touch on as well when it comes to taking up space. It's really about giving yourself credit and almost exposing yourself in a way. Honestly, like, I said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Like, this probably, like, I'm probably not even going to go around telling people that I have a podcast. I'm probably not even going to post this at all and claim and say with my chest that I have a podcast. Go watch it right now. Go listen to it right now. Because this is what I'm saying. It's stuff like this that just becomes so difficult to take up space, And I don't think it's a good thing. I think that we should practice doing this. In a way, this is my form of like exposure therapy to some extent. I mean, I'm just like a random person who's like making a video or making a podcast on the internet for like the first time ever. Like, this is some next level, like, radical exposure therapy for me personally. And yeah, like, anyways, back to the whole imposter syndrome thing when it comes to taking up space. You can only take up space when you give yourself credit for the things that you achieve or the things that you do. That includes like the things that you want to pursue as well. I feel like nowadays, everyone is so quick to put a label on it, and like claim things that, XYZ person started this trend, or like, this is what she does, or this is what that does. And it just puts down other people who might have the same thoughts, the same ambitions. And I guess it's all about understanding that, like, there is enough to go around for everyone. There's enough credit to go around for everyone. There is enough celebration to go around for everyone. Just because another person was celebrated for one thing doesn't mean that you can't do that same thing, and put your own name on it. Again, another example of taking up your space. I feel like this applies to even, again, going back to like what I'm doing right now. There are like 100,000 podcasts on the internet. I know people who have podcasts, whatever. You probably know someone who has a podcast. And I sat there for so long thinking like, okay, I probably shouldn't make a podcast because like there's so many already. Like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's just about taking up your space because no one is you. End of the day, as corny as that sounds, sorry, no one is you at the end of the day. No one will be able to provide the insights, emotion, mindset, feelings that you can provide being the person that you are. And I think perspective also is everything. Everyone comes from a different perspective. Everyone comes from a different upbringing and background. And that also adds to each person's individual experience. This is getting really complex really quick. Yeah, I just think that it's about time that we stop diminishing ourselves just to let other people shine. I'm trying every day to practice a huge sort of mindset shift and move more towards an abundant mindset and, celebrating other people because knowing that your time will come too. And this applies, again, in every context possible, whatever way it resonates with you, whether it be in the workspace or, in your personal life and so on. Same thing applies to your, friendships and relationships. I feel like, and I could talk about this forever. If you guys want me to talk about this more, I am so happy to do so. I love talking about friendship dynamics. I feel like as you grow older, you have different friends that serve a different purpose in your life. Not everyone is a friend the same way that we were when we were kids. Every friend that you have in your life serves a different sort of purpose. You have your going out friends, you have your friends that you can vent to, cry to, get advice from, etc. This is a topic for another time, but I'm talking about it specifically when it comes to taking up space in relationships as well. There are some people, who just constantly listen and listen and listen, but no one ever listens to them. That's another instance of not taking up space in your relationships. You should put yourself out there to the point where you are able to also, you don't need to suppress yourself, suppress your feelings just because your friends keep going on and venting about things that they're doing. It's also about, when I personally, in my relationships as well, have this thought all the time that like, oh, someone has it worse. I should just not say anything because someone has it worse. Again, a very people-pleasing thought, but also, you know, in turn makes me take up less space in my friendships and relationships because I spend so much time just, you know, trying to be there for others. That's not to say, I mean, I'm working on that a lot. I now will hold my friends by the ear if need be and be like, listen to me while I vent. Listen to me while I talk. Hopefully I can do that here now. So I think the note that I just want to end on and sort of leave you with the thought of is my way of life, which I share with like my closest people in my life, which I now want to share with you. And I read somewhere. Also, I need y'all to know, every time I say I read somewhere on this damn show, just know it's a TikTok. Okay, it's a TikTok, it's a reel, it's some form of video moving media. I do not read. I will read soon, but I did not read somewhere. I probably saw a TikTok. Anyways, I saw a TikTok somewhere that said that when you, and this really resonated with me, so I'm really hoping that this resonates with all of you guys. And I realized that I do this in turn anyways in life. And I this has been like how I've been raised in a way, and just all I know to do is connect with people, talk to people, be there for people, listen to people, and make other people feel good. And I love hyping my friends up. Like, not just my friends, strangers. I just love it so much because I'm a firm believer of if you don't have anything nice to say, literally just don't say it at all. Like, literally just stop talking. Like, there is no point in that, you know? And when I do say something, it comes from the core of my heart. If I'm telling you that that's a good video, I'm like, that's an amazing video. I love it. You know, like I just love making people feel good. And this quote that I read sort of further established that mindset in my mind and made me realize that this is what I want to take with me always. And that is, when you leave this world, your material possessions and your material goods, your achievements are not going to come with you to the grave. They are also they're just going to diminish into, you know, you're not taking anything away with you. The only thing that you leave behind on this earth is the way that you are remembered and the way that you make other people feel. And I think that is so important. That always brings me down back to the planet. I feel when I am in this deep abyss of figuring things out, and I'm like, I have no achievements, or I'm not doing good enough, or whatever. I feel like it is so important to remind yourself to really nurture and to pour into making people feel good. Because at the end of the day, when you as an individual, which we are all going to leave at some point, when you leave, the only thing that you leave behind on this world is the way that you make other people feel. And hopefully I can make people feel more things. I can make more people feel things by sharing my voice and sharing my thoughts and making this a space for everyone to feel good together, to feel lost together, and to feel a little funny and silly goofy together, you know, sometimes if we feel like it. And yeah, so I kind of just want to end with that before I begin rambling. Another thing that I want to say, I feel like many people don't talk about the BTS of a podcast, and it's really difficult. As someone who has literal ADHD brain, I cannot keep a stream of consciousness. So you will be seeing a lot of that too, where I will be jumping on tangents, but that is okay. And hopefully you will tune in for the next one, which will be coming soon. Definitely. Can't promise, but it will. And yeah, I love you guys. Mostly my best friends, because I don't know who else I'm talking to. Just kidding. I love whoever's watching this, and just know that you're not alone, and hopefully this will be your space to have a little virtual best friend. Okay, bye. I'm gonna stop talking.